fine. I'll make a new Java project. Day 2. So we'll study OOPS and we'll also write some Selenium code to see how object-oriented programming is used in Selenium. Fine. So over here in day 2 source folder, I'm going to create a new file, a new class, a new Java file. Okay. And I'll call it say planet. Fine. So this is the class planet. There is no main function under it. Since there is no main function, you cannot just execute this class. But yes, we can define the properties of a planet. Okay, we can define that, say, what is the name of the planet? Okay, and another property can be int size of the planet. So these are the two properties of the planet class. Okay, and these are technically known as global non-static variables. Both of them are known as global non-static variables. Now, what is global? What is non-static? I will explain you in some time. Okay, let me just make a new class, another file, say test.java with the main function. Now this is test.java. It has got main function. Any class with the main function can be executed in Java. Okay, I can run this file as a Java application. Fine. So if you print over here or if you write new planet. Now this is something which is different for you. So this is known as object creation of the planet class. So in the test class, I'm accessing the planet class and I'm creating the object of the planet class. Now, what is an object? What do I achieve by creating the object of the planet class? And why do we basically create the object? Okay, when you create the object, then in the memory, you create the object of the planet class, and this planet object has got two variables, name and size. Okay, so this object will also have two variables. Say the first variable will be name, the second variable will be size. So both these variables will be the part of this object, but this object is just a standing object in the memory. It cannot be accessed. Okay, to access this object, you have to give it a reference. Okay, so we write like this, say planet P1 equals to new planet. So on the left hand side, we have P1. P1 is known as the object reference. P1 goes and points towards the object. Object and object reference, both of them are different. Okay, at times people say that P1 is the object. No, P1 is not the object. It points towards an object. Now, what is the difference between object and pointing towards the object? You will get to know in some time. Now, when you create the object with P1, you can access the properties of the object. You can access the name. Okay, and you can access the size property. What you do with P1, you name this planet like say Jupiter and you give it some size, right? Okay. Similarly, you can create another planet object, say P2, and you can give the name. So every object you create, you can define different properties to that object. Okay, when you create another object, then one more object will be defined in the memory, and you can define the name and the size of both the objects, right? This will be with the size of say 500. Now, anyone with any questions in this, please do feel free to ask me. Okay, now to this object, what is pointing towards this object? Towards this object, P2 is pointing. Fine. Now you can print the values as well. Okay, if I write P1 dot name and P2 dot name, you can print the properties of the planet as well. So when you run this code, so this will print Jupiter and Earth. Okay, and moreover, the most important thing is that suppose if I put a breakpoint on this particular line and I run it in the debug mode, I debug my program. At a runtime, you will be able to see that, you know, planet class is there, P1 is there. If I move my mouse over P1, I can see the properties of P1. The name is Jupiter, size is 10,000. This is very important thing that at runtime you can see the properties of the planet class objects. Okay, every object will have different properties and you can easily see the state of the objects basically. This helps a lot when we are working with Selenium and building scripts because at times we have to build scripts which are complex and you have to see the state of the objects as well. Fine. Anyways, right, so this was the planet class, and in this planet class you can also create functions. For example, public void get details. So this function will or print details. This function will print the details of the planet. For example, I'll print name of the planet has size as. So if you have a print details function, okay, technically this function is known as non-static function. Now what is static? What is non-static? I'm going to tell you, and by the end of this class, I'm also going to give you one or two exercises to do, which will give you good insight into object-oriented programming as well. Okay, so when you have this function print details, so what happens is that this function also becomes the part of the object. The print details function also becomes the part of the object. In both the objects, it will be lying. Okay, when P1 calls the print details function, if I write over here, say marketing line, and if I write P1 dot print details and P2 dot print details, when P1 calls the print details function, the print details function is printing name and size. It will print the name and size of P1. Okay, and P2, when P2 calls it, it will print the name and size of P2. Okay, so when you run this code, see, it prints Jupiter has size as this, and Earth has size as this. Okay, the function is same. There is just one print details function in this class, but it depends on which object is calling that particular function. Okay, so in order to access these variables in the planet class, or in order to access the print details function, you have to create the object of this particular class. I'm sorry, yeah. You have to create the object of this particular class. Now, suppose there is a global variable named as string, say solar system. Okay, right. So all the planets, right, they belong to the same solar system. Right. So this variable, when it is initialized, right, it will be initialized to the same solar system. So this variable will have the same uh, solar system, right, uh, or in a different way. How do I explain you? Okay, let me do it this way, that I'll define that P1 dot uh, P1 dot solar system is, say, our solar system, and a P2 dot solar system is also our solar system. So both the planets have same solar system. If I create the object of another planet, say Pluto or Saturn, then the solar system will remain same, our solar system. So it doesn't make sense that this variable, the value of this variable is same, and we just define this variable inside every particular object. Okay, the value is going to remain same. So what we practically do is that we don't define it under every object. We make it static. Here comes static. Static creates a lot of difference. When you create a variable static, then this variable is removed from the object, and it lies at a common location in the memory. You can say like this, solar system, and this location can be accessed by any particular object. Okay, so this is the thing, that is, when you create an object of a class, right, and if there is something which is static member of the class, then static is not the part of the object. Okay, so the golden principle number one is that, yeah, static is not part of the object. So you have to remember this thing. So if I go to my test class, and if I look at the solar system variable, I'm not getting an error, but I'm getting a warning that fine, this thing is not the part of the object. So please don't try to access it with P1 and P2. Okay, so what we do is that we don't access the static variables like this. We access the static variables with the help of the class. I can simply write that planet dot, you will get the option solar system is equal to our solar system. Okay, right. So all the planets will have this variable as a common variable among them. All the objects of the planet classes. Okay, I hope you are able to understand my point over here. That is, you can have the planet class and a static variable. So this is known as a global static variable. Why global? Because it is outside the function. It is accessible inside all the functions of this class. Okay, so that's why. Now, if you have to access the non-static variables, you have to create the object of the class. And if you have to access the static variables, you can directly access them with the name of the class. Okay, suppose if I make a function known as public static void print solar system. So I can go and print that a solar system is and the name of the solar system. Now, this is a static function. So objects can be of two types. Sorry, global variables can be of two types. Global non-static, global static, and functions can be of two types. Non-static functions as well as static functions. Right. Static can be accessed directly with the name of the class. I can write planet dot print solar system. To access static members of the class, you don't need to create the objects. You see that? It is printing that solar system is our solar system. Right. Now, now comes the major point. That point is static cannot access non-static. So you have to understand this. If you have a static function, this is the function print solar system. Where is it lying in the memory? In the memory, it will be lying somewhere at a common location in the memory print solar system. Okay, which is common for all the objects. Now inside this function, if I say that name is or just go and print the name variable, you will get an error. Whose name variable you need to print? In this function, this is not the part of any object. Object will have a name. Okay, so basically the rule is static is not the part of any object and non-static is part of an object. So static functions, they are not in an object. You cannot access non-static variables and functions from static. Okay, I cannot call print details function from here. It will not allow, it will give me an error. Okay, but the opposite is true. Non-static can access static. Inside the print details function, which is suppose this function, I can access the solar system name, or I can access the print details function. Because this is common for all the objects and non-static is inside an object. The opposite is true. Static cannot access non-static, but non-static can access static. This will be more clear to you when you do it yourself. And at the end of this class, I'm going to give you some exercises, multiple choice questions. By solving those questions, this will be more clear. Okay, right. So when you access static from non-static, that is possible. Print details function can access these variables because they are lying at a common location. But these variables or these functions over here cannot access the name. If you try to access the name, then basically which object's name you are trying to access. Okay, right? Now this is the thing. Now coming over to objects, we have got two objects created over here for the planet class, and each object has got an object reference P1 and P2. P1 and P2 are the object references. Right. Now, hold on. If I write over here P1 equals to P2, now here comes the difference. Now you'll understand what is difference between object and object reference. Now if I write P1 equals to P2, then this basically means that in the memory, P1 will no longer point towards this object. P1 will point towards the same object towards which P2 is pointing. One object can have multiple object references. That is also possible. Okay. And if I print over here P1 dot print details and P2 dot print details again. Okay, I'm again printing both the details, and if I run this will, okay, it's throwing me some error. Hold on. What is this? Just a minute. Oh, wow. Just a minute. Okay, it is, I just wrote P1 equals to P2 and hold on. Let me comment these functions for time being. Okay, just hold on. So this is printing this. Now if I write P1 equals to P2 and if I again call the print details function, now yeah, this is fine. It is printing Earth has size 500, Earth has size 500 because both P1 and P2 are now pointing towards the Earth object. And if one of the object changes the state, I mean to say that if I write P1 dot name is say Mars. Okay, and if I again print the details, P1 dot print details, P2 dot, so it will bring up Mars over here. Because if P1 changes the object name to Mars, if this gets changed to Mars, then it obviously whether P1 retrieves it or P2 retrieves it, you'll get the object name as Mars. So basically one thing you have to note is that objects can have multiple references. Okay, this is possible. Objects can have multiple references. Okay. And the second point which you need to understand is that object is different than object reference. Okay. So these are the 5 points which you need to understand for objects. Okay, object reference is different. If I write, I can also write like this: planet P3 equals to null. This means that P3 planet is P3 is not pointing towards any planet. Okay, P3 is a reference which is just hanging in the memory by its own. Okay. However, on the next line, I can write P3 equals to new planet. Okay. It is similar to writing, say, if I declare a variable int I, and on the next line I write I equals to 100. All right. So this is somewhat similar. Okay. So this is all about object-oriented programming, initial part, not complete object-oriented programming, that you know how to create the objects, you know what objects are, and you know what object references are. Static is something which is common for all the objects. Okay, and non-static is part of every object. And static cannot access non-static. In static functions, you cannot access the non-static variables in functions. Okay, now moving ahead, let us see how these things are used in Selenium. How the object creation is used in case of Selenium. Fine. Look, everything in Selenium is based on oops. Okay, I'll create a new class known as Selenium Basics, and most of you must have done this, that is working with the basic drivers. Okay, so if I go to the website selenium.dev, and on this website, if I go to the download section and if I go to API docs, then you will see that these are all the classes inside Selenium. These are all the inbuilt classes, and you build objects of some of these classes in order to work with Selenium. Nobody understands or runs or works with all these classes. Okay, but if you scroll down, you will have something known as WebDriver written over here. If you click on the WebDriver over here, you will see few classes mentioned over here, implementing classes. Now, what are these implementing classes? You will come to know gradually. But over here, every class, each and every class is representing a particular browser, right? For example, Chrome driver class. It is for Chrome, Edge driver, Firefox driver, Opera driver, Internet Explorer. Remote web driver is used in case of Selenium Grid when you have to run the tests parallelly and all. This is Safari driver for Safari. Okay, so let's look at simple Chrome driver first. Fine. So Chrome driver is the inbuilt class in Selenium. Okay. To use it, you will have to include the Selenium jars in the project. Every new project you create, you will have to add the Selenium jars in that project. Okay, so add all these jars and add the jars in the lib folder. Okay, so your project is now Selenium ready. Now over here, You can create the object of the class known as Chrome driver. Most of you will get an error. When you create the object, you have to move the mouse over the error and import the Chrome driver from Selenium. Okay, you'll have to write this import statement. So this will be imported from one of the Selenium jar files which has been incorporated in the project. Okay, and if you run this code, most of you will get an error. Okay, like in my case, I also get an exception or something. Look, with Chrome, you have to be a lot careful. Fine. First of all, you go to the website selenium.dev. You have to actually download an exe for Chrome. Go to the downloads section and scroll down. You will see browsers over here, expand them. For Chrome, okay, they have referred a documentation for compatibility information. Right, you open this link. Okay, and you go and check out the version of your Chrome browser. Okay, you go over here, go to help and go to about Google Chrome. My version of Google Chrome is 89 point something. Okay, and incidentally, it's getting updated now. So let it update. Hold on. Actually, for every version of Chrome you are having, they will have a Chrome driver exe version, right? So currently, I think my version is getting updated to 90. Right. If your version is older, maybe 85 or 81, you can go in the downloads section over here. And in the download section, you will have all the older version Chrome drivers written over here. So what you basically need to do is that, like, my browser over here is being upgrading, and most probably it is being upgraded to the version 90. Fine. So you click on this version and you will get different zip files. Download the zip file for Windows. Whether you are on 32-bit, 64-bit, it doesn't matter. You can download. For Mac, these are the links. Okay. So you download this exe. Is it updated? How what do I do with it? You can't even stop Chrome from updating. That is the problem. Okay. Okay. Let it update itself. Meanwhile, we'll download this exe and this exe is over here, and I'll extract it somewhere on my PC. Say D drive drivers folder. So you put the exe over here and you extract, right click on it and simply say extract here. So this will extract the exe Chrome driver exe. Right. And you go and simply say that system dot set property WebDriver dot Chrome dot driver. So system is a class and set property is a static function in that class. It's an internal class, so I can directly set some property with it by calling this static function. The property name is webdriver.chrome.driver and the value is the path of the exe on your machine. You need to give that path d drive drivers chrome driver.exe. Okay, so this way you can tell the Selenium that here chrome driver.exe is lying. You don't need to run this exe. You will not achieve anything by running this exe. All right, and you know, I think my browser has upgraded. Right, if I run this code, hold on. You see, this is launching a Chrome browser. See, this is the Chrome browser which is launched by Selenium. So just by creating the object of this class, I'm able to launch Chrome browser. Okay. And when you write Chrome driver dot, you get access to all the non-static functions, right? For example, one of the functions is get. In this, you can write the URL and you will be navigated to that particular website. But the only thing with Chrome driver is that you have to be careful with version of Chrome and version of exe. Both should match. Okay, if both of them do not match, you get something known as session not created or found exception. If you get this kind of exception in the output, that means the versions are not being matched. Sometimes Chrome updates itself. So you have to download the exe corresponding to the updated version. Fine. So if you run this code, it will launch the browser and will take you to yahoo.com. Okay. Now, once this is done, the other browsers you can work with are like Firefox. Okay, you can create the object of internal class known as Firefox Driver. So for Firefox, you have a class known as Firefox Driver. Okay, and for Firefox Driver also, you have an exe. For every driver, you have an exe. So this is the Firefox driver and you open the documentation and this is the Gecko driver. You can go to Gecko driver releases link and latest release is this. Okay, you click on it and download the exe for Windows 64-bit. So hold on. So this is Gecko driver exe. I will keep it in the same folder. Extract it. And all you need to do is that, just a minute. Yeah, I'll delete this. Yeah, you need to give the same path in the code. You need to write the line system.setProperty webdriver dot, you call it a Gecko driver. In Java or in Selenium, you call it Gecko driver and you give the path of this particular exe, Gecko driver.exe. Sorry. So you create the object of Firefox driver Look, if you just write FIRE and hits Control Space Bar of the keyboard, you will get all the classes which are starting with this name. And then you keep on filtering it and you can select the class and you can create the object with the shortcut and the class will automatically be imported as well. Okay. And similarly, you can write that Firefox driver dot get to http yahoo.com. So this will launch Firefox and take you to Yahoo. But the only problem with Firefox is that, once Firefox gets updated from say version 10 to version 11, then the exe for version 11 doesn't come so quickly from the Firefox guys. Chrome driver guys are quick. Google is quick. If it upgrades the Google, sorry, if it updates the Google Chrome, then they immediately release the exe as well. Okay, you see that Firefox goes to Yahoo. So what I was telling you was that if Firefox upgrades itself, they don't give the exe immediately. But in Firefox, you have a setting. You can go to tools options and find the option to update. So check this option, check for updates, but let you choose to install them. So Firefox will tell you that updates are there. Would you like to install? You select no at that time. Don't let your Firefox upgrade. This is the simple thing. Don't let Firefox upgrade. You don't have any control over Chrome. Chrome gets automatically updated, but in Firefox, you can choose not to upgrade it. Right. Now, similarly, there is another browser known as Edge these days. For Edge, we have got Edge driver class. Actually, Edge is just a browser. Behind it, they have the Chromium engine only. Behind it, it's all Chrome. Actually, Edge is all Chrome behind the scenes. The internal functions and the internal functionality of Edge is completely Chrome based. It's using the Chromium engine. There has been a pact between Microsoft and Google. So the browser is by Microsoft, but the internal functionality is by Google, same as Chrome. Okay, and for Edge driver as well, you have the same thing. You have to do the same thing. You have an exe. Okay, if I launch my Edge, okay, in Edge you go to the settings and check out the version of your Edge. Okay, if you go to the settings, if you go to the settings, then hold on. So you will have about Microsoft Edge. You will have again, see the Microsoft Edge version is similar to that of Chrome 89.0.774.77. So, corresponding to this, if you go to the Edge exe website, then they will tell you release 89 and they have exact version 774. This is my version. So for the 64-bit operating system, you can download the exe from this link. Okay, and save it, Edge driver exe, and the process again remains the same. Driver exe over here, right, and you give the same command system.set property webdriver.edge.driver you have to write, and you have to give the path of Microsoft Edge driver dot exe. Now you can launch Edge and you can go to the website http yahoo.com as well. Okay, so this is a pretty simple. That is, you can create objects of internal classes like Firefox, Chrome, Edge. There are other classes as well. We will gradually study them. Fine. You see that Edge has opened over here and it is taking to you to Yahoo. All right. Now, if you look at this thing, if you look at the documentation, there are other classes as well, like you have got Safari driver, Opera driver. These aren't very stable. Okay, remote web driver we'll use when we are working with uh, grid, when we are running the tests parallelly. Okay, for time being, we'll use three major drivers like this. And you don't have to write the system.set property lines again and again. It is not required to write these lines. What you can do is that this is the folder. Keep all the exes in a single folder. Okay, copy the path of the folder. Go to my computer properties. Fine. And go to advanced system settings and go to environment variables. So you can set up a system variable over here. Okay. Or you can edit the path variable. Sorry, not the system variable. Edit the path variable. There would be a pre-existing variable known as path. Edit the path variable and hold on and give the path, create a new path for the drivers folder. Okay, in case at times what happens if you have a Windows 7 or Windows 8, you'll get a screen like this when you click on the edit button. Go to the end of this variable, put a semicolon, and after semicolon give the path. Okay, in Windows 10 or something, you won't get that. Okay, you will get a window like this where you can give the path where your exes are lying, and you will have to restart your PC. Once you restart your PC and you open up the Eclipse, then in that case you won't have to give this particular line. So you directly create the objects of Edge driver, Firefox driver, Chrome driver. It will pick up the exes from the system path automatically. So you don't have to give system.set property in that particular case. Now in these classes, Chrome driver, Firefox driver, Edge driver, there are also static members and which are very less. Okay, builder function is there. We don't use it that much. Okay, so basically in these drivers, whatever are the functions and the variables, those all are non-static, and we will have to create the objects of these classes and understand what are the functions inside the objects of these classes. And then we will have to use those functions. Okay, so does this mean basically that if I have a link on a website and if I have to click on a link in Firefox, and if I have to click on the same link in Chrome or Edge, will I write separate set of code? Because I have got separate objects for each browser over here. If I have to write a code to say login inside a website, will I have to write separate code for Chrome, separate code for Firefox, and separate code for Edge? No, you don't have to do that. The answer comes up from the concept of interfaces in Java, and that's what we are going to do next. That is, how can you dynamically launch the browsers? When you are automating a website, you want that single script should run on all the browsers. That's what the goal is. That is, suppose I start a script and suppose I have to write a script which goes and books a flight ticket, say, just taking an example. So I want that I set the browser name somewhere in the beginning and the script will run on that particular browser. If I change the browser name, then the same script will run on the changed browser. So you don't have to write a separate script for every particular browser. So how do you do that? Okay, so that I'm going to take up in the next class. Fine, the concept of interfaces and all. But yes, over here, you know, there are a lot of things to be learned, okay, gradually. And I will give you some exercises as well. Okay, I have got exercises which I will deliver gradually during the training.